As promised, our OHL Belleville Bowls goalie is up next, and for this we will be using a standard rainbow loom in the aligned configuration, and that's where all the pins are even with each other. So let's get started. For the goalie, we're going to be using black bands, clear bands, 3 white bands for his neck protector, red, yellow, and 4 silver bands for his skate blades. And you may want a C-clip as well. The goalie has a few more attachments than the regular player. We're going to start with the blocker pad, and for that we're going to be using single black bands, and we want to go down the right side 3 times with 1 black band each. We also want to go down the center 3 times, again using 1 black band. We want to push those down, and now we want to take a single black band and we're going to double it and place it over each of the cross pins. So we want 4 of these holding bands going across. And 4. We also want to place cap bands on these bottom 2 pegs. For the cap bands, I'm going to take a single black band and double it and wrap it around each peg 2 times. 1 for the center peg. Again, I'm going to take a single black band and double it and wrap it around this peg 2 times. Okay, and now we can loop our blocker pad, and I'm going to reach down through all of these bands, grab the single black band at the bottom, and loop forward. And just a note of caution, be careful because we have double looped our holding bands. That does make it a little tighter, so you don't want to break your bands. Just be careful when you're looping. And the last one. And now we want to place 2 slip knot bands here on each of these top pegs. So I'm going to take a single black band, reach down through the center pin, grab a hold of my black slip knot band, pull it up through the center, and form my slip knot. I'm going to do the same thing on the right side pin. I'm going to reach down through, grab a hold of my band, pull it up through the center, and form my slip knot. And now we can remove this from the loom, and I'm just going to place my hook in the top 2 pegs and carefully pull these off. Now, you may notice when you get this off your loom that you do have the holding band. It's kind of hard to see because it's a black band, but what we've got is the holding band at the bottom is visible through the bands, and it may look like you've done something wrong. You haven't. That's intentional, and that's supposed to be like that. So we're just going to leave that, and we will set this aside. Okay, and now we're ready to move on to our goalie pads. And for that we're going to be using our black bands, and we will also need 2 red bands and 2 yellow bands. Now, our goalie pads are very similar to the blocker pad in that we are going to be using a single black band, and what we want to do for the first one is we are going to go down the right side 4 times with a single black band each time. And for the center, we're going to go down 3 times with a single black band. And what we want to do at the bottom, we are going to put a yellow band for the 4th band, and then we want to place a red band from the 5th peg on the bottom to the 4th peg on the right. And now for the second goalie pad, we want to take 3 black bands and put each of them going down the right side, followed by our yellow band, and we want to go down the center 4 times with a single black band. I thought I was done dropping things. And then we want to add our red band from the bottom of our goalie pad up 1 peg in the center. And now what we need to do is add our holding bands, and again these are going to be double looped, so we want to take a single black band and double it and place it across, all of the cross pins. And we're going to do that for both of our goalie pads. And again, all of these are going to be double looped. The same thing on the top one. We're just going to go up 5 times. 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now we need to put cap bands on all of these bottom pegs. And what we're going to do is take a single black band and double it and wrap it 2 times around each of the bottom pegs on the goalie pads. And if you find this difficult to do, and I'll show you, you can use your hook, double your band around your hook like this, and then you may find it easier to stretch all 4 loops over your peg. I'll show you again. Take your single black band and double it on your hook, and then stretch your hook over the peg. One more, doubled, and double it on this peg. There we go. And now we're ready to loop, and we want to start with the corner opposite where the red band is. So we're going to reach inside all of these bands and grab the single black band at the bottom and loop forward once. And now we want to go over and reach in through all of these bands and grab our red, just our red band, and we are going to loop it over to the center. And now we can reach in and grab our yellow band and loop that forward. And the rest is just straightforward. We're going to be grabbing our 1 single black band and looping it forward, forming our teardrop shapes as we go. There we go. And again, we want to start with the corner opposite where the red is attached. So we want to reach in and grab that 1 band and loop it forward, and then we can move over and grab our single red band and loop it over to the right, and the yellow, and loop it forward. And we're just going to continue up to the top, making sure that we're forming our teardrop shapes and that we're just grabbing a single black band. And there we go. And now we're ready for our slip knot bands. So we are just going to reach our hook down through. Because I'm going to be using the slip knot bands to attach these pads to my the goalie, we don't want to use broken bands here because we're going to need the loop from the other end. So as much as I touted it on the last tutorial for the player, and it's fine for the top of his head, but not for the blocker pad or the goalie pad. You want to have a full band for these. And I'm glad I got that band on. It slipped off the pegs. And we're going to do the same thing for the top. We're going to reach down in, grab a hold of our slip knot band, pull it up, and form our slip knot. And the same thing for the outside peg, reaching down through all of the bands, grabbing a hold of our slip knot band and pulling it through. And now we're ready to remove these from the loom, and I'm just going to put my hook down through the top and release these from the pegs. And I'm going carefully because the bands are doubled and they can break. And once again, I wanted to point out that your holding band is going to be on the outside of your goalie pad here, and that's exactly what you want. So I'm going to remove my hook, and I'm just going to stretch out my pad here a little bit and remove the dog hair. Anybody else have pets and find that even if they're not in the room, their hair kind of migrates to your bands? And I'm going to remove this one from the loom as well, reaching my hook through and just carefully pulling this off the loom. And again, your holding band should be on the outside of your goalie pad. And that's exactly what it's supposed to be. Please don't think you've done something wrong. That's intentional. And we will set that aside. Next, what we need to loom is the arms and the legs. Before that, we're going to do his goalie glove. And we will again be using our loom in the offset configuration. And we'll also be using 2 black bands. And we're going to start at the bottom. And we're going to start from the 4th peg up. And we're going to go down. I'm going to straighten out my bands. We're starting on the 4th peg from the bottom on the left-hand side, and we want to go down 2 times with 2 black bands each. And then we need to take 2 black bands and go from the 2nd peg down, where we have our bands, over to the center. So we're going from the 3rd peg from the bottom on the left to the 2nd peg from the bottom on the left. And we're going to go from the 2nd peg on the left to the 1st peg in the center from the bottom. And we will need to close this off with 2 bands going up the center from the 1st to the 2nd peg. And we're going to cap this with a single black band wrapped 3 times around this peg. Now, we're ready to loop. I'm not going to put a holding band because I want the glove to be kind of expandable and bigger, and if I put a holding band on, it's just going to keep it in tight. So we're not going to use a holding band, but we are going to reach in and grab the top 2 bands, which are going straight up the center, and the next 2 bands are going to go over to the left, and then we want to stay in the center and again loop over to the left, and then we will reach in and loop up the 2 links on the left side. And there we go. So I'm just going to remove it from my loom, and I will get my holding hook, and I'm going to set this aside. Okay, and now we're ready to do the arm and leg attachments. And for the arms, we're going to need black bands, yellow bands, and red bands. And I'm going to do the glove hand first because it's a little bit different. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 black bands and go down the loom 2 times with 2 black bands. And then I want to place 2 yellow bands. There we go. And now I'm going to take my glove that we made and I'm going to attach it to this peg here. And it's going to be off to the side, but that's okay, we can move it around after. And now we need to take a red band and we are going to wrap it around our hook 4 times. And we're going to reach in and grab the 2 yellow bands. And it will help if you pull your glove back so you can see them. And we want to slide all 4 of these red bands down onto our yellow bands. There we go. And loop ahead in our teardrop shape. And then we can just continue looping. And I'm going to grab my holding hook and remove this from the loom. There we go. And like I said, I'm just going to move the glove over to be in the center, and I will set that aside. And now for the other hand, we are going to use 2 black bands, I should say arm and hand. And again, we are going to go down 2 times with 2 black bands, followed by 2 yellow bands, 2 black bands, and 3 black bands for the glove. And this we can cap with a single black band wrapped 3 times around the peg. And now we can loop this, but first we want to get our single red band and wrap it 4 times around our hook. And we are going to loop forward with the black bands. And again, when we get to the yellow, we're going to slide all 4 of these loops down onto the yellow band and loop forward. And then we can continue with the last 2 black links. And again, I will get my holding hook and remove this from the loom. And we can set that aside. And now we're going to do the legs and the skates. And again, we'll be using black, yellow, red, and we will also need our silver bands. So we are going to start with 2 black bands, followed by 2 yellow bands, and then 2 red bands, and then our 2 silver bands to represent the blades of the skate. And we're going to cap this with a black band wrapped 3 times around the peg. We're going to do the same thing for the other leg. 2 black bands, 2 yellow bands, 2 red bands, and our 2 silver bands. And again, we will cap this with a single black band wrapped 3 times around our peg. And now we can loop these. We're just going to reach in, grab our 2 bands, and loop our teardrop shape forward. And the same thing for the other side, reaching down through our cap band and looping the 2 silver, 2 red, 2 yellow, and 2 black. And we're going to grab our holding hook, and we can place this aside as well. There we go. And we can adjust our cap bands and our stripes for our shirt on our arms when we get it attached to our character. So before we band our loom, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go over the attachments with you so everybody has the same. What we should have for attachments are one arm with a glove attached, a goalie glove, sorry, bigger glove, a second arm with our 3-banded glove, our 2 legs with skates, our 2 goalie pads, which are the ones with the yellow and red bands, and our blocker pad. So we're going to set those aside, and now we are ready to band our loom. I know that I've switched a couple of times here. We want to make sure that we're using our standard rainbow loom in the aligned configuration. We did have to switch to the offset for the glove, but we will be going back to our aligned configuration where all the pegs are even for our main character. We're going to start at the top with his helmet, and we'll be using double bands and black to start with, and we're going to put 2 black bands down the center. I'm going to even these out. And we want 2 black bands from the first pin in the center to the first pin on the left, and 2 black bands from the first pin in the center, without flinging them, to the first pin on the right. And next we want to make a row of 2 black bands each across. So we're going to put 2 black bands from the second to the third peg on the left, 2 black bands going down the center, and 2 black bands on the right. And I'm just again going to use my hook to even out these bands. And as I've mentioned, the neater you have your bands when you put them on the loom, the neater your character is going to look when you remove it from the loom. So it's good to make sure that your bands are all lined up and straight. Next we want to put a row of clear bands, and we're going to put 2 clear bands from the 3rd to the 4th on the left, the 3rd to the 4th in the center, and the 3rd to the 4th on the right. We're going to add the bottom of his helmet, and we are going to start with 2 black bands going down the center. And I also want to add my neck guard here, and we're going to continue down the center with 3 white bands. And that's just, the 3 bands are to make the neck more stable. And now we want to close off the bottom of the helmet with 2 black bands from the 5th peg in the center to the 4th peg on the left, and 2 black bands from the 5th peg in the center to the 4th peg on the right. And we're going to continue down with his jersey, and we want to take a single yellow band and a single red band, and we'll put both continuing down the center on the same peg. And now we can go to the left side and put 2 black bands from the 6th peg in the center to the 7th peg on the left, and 2 black bands from the 6th peg in the center to the 7th peg on the right. And we're going to go down the left side with 2 black bands 2 times going down the left. We want to do the same thing on the right and put 2 black bands going 2 times down the right side. We want to continue that in the center. Again, 2 black bands 2 times going down the center. Next we're going to move to yellow bands, and we're going to put a row of yellow bands across. 2 yellow bands continuing down the left, 2 yellow bands in the center, and 2 yellow bands on the right. We'll also put a row of red going across, so 2 red bands continuing down the left, 2 red bands in the center, and 2 red bands on the right. And now we're going to move down to his hockey pants. And I got it right that time. I keep calling them hockey shorts. But we're going to go 2 times down the left side with 2 black bands each. 2 black bands going down the right. Again, 2 times. And 2 black bands in the center. And we can close off his pants, with 2 black bands from the second peg in the center to the first peg on the bottom, and 2 black bands from the second peg in the center to the first peg on the right. And now we're ready for our holding bands, and we're going to take a single black band and go across the second pegs, a single clear band and go across the third pegs, and again a single black band across the fourth pegs. Moving down to the shirt, we want to put a single black band across the 8th pegs, a single yellow band across the 9th pegs, single red across the 10th, a single black across the 11th, and a single black across the 12th. And now we're ready for our attachments, and we're going to start with his legs and his skates, and one is going to go on the last peg down on the bottom, and the other on the last peg on the right. And to attach the arms, you want to decide which hand will have your goalie glove and which will have the regular glove. And we're just going to put one on the 7th peg from the top on the left, and the other will go on the 7th peg from the top on the right. And now we're ready to loop, because we will attach our blocker pads and our goalie pads after. And we're going to start at the bottom, and we'll start on the left, and we're going to reach in and grab the top 2 black bands, which are going to loop over to the center. And the same thing on the right. The top 2 bands, we're going to loop over to the center. And now we can loop up the left side, and we're going to go up to the neck. So we want to grab the bottom 2 black bands and loop them forward in a teardrop shape. And we want to make sure we stay inside the holding bands as we loop forward to the peg above. So again, we're making sure we're grabbing just the bottom 2 black bands, which is especially important here at the arm because you don't want to grab any of the arm bands. And now we're going to go down and do the same thing up the right side, grabbing the bottom 2 bands and looping them forward. And again, we want to make sure that we stay inside the holding bands and that we're forming our teardrop shape as we go. And we will loop to the neck. And now we can loop up the center. So we're going to reach down through all of these bands, grab the bottom 2, and loop forward. I find it's a little bit easier when you're using an aligned configuration for your loom to avoid the holding bands than it is for the offset, just because they're more visible on the aligned loom. And now when we get to the neck, we need to remember that we've used 3 bands here So we want to make sure that we grab all 3 before we loop forward. And this is a little bit snug, so I'm going to place my hook in and release some of this tension by rolling my hook around that peg. And now I can reach in and grab the top 2 bands, which are going over to the right. The next 2 bands are going to the left, and the last 2 will go up the center. And now I'm going to loop up the left side, looping the 2 clear bands, 2 black bands, and 2 black bands to the top center peg. We'll do the same thing on the right, looping the bottom 2 clear bands, 2 black bands, and 2 black bands. And then we can finish up the center with 2 clear bands and our last 2 links of black. There we go. And now we want to check that we have looped everything. It would be horrible to get this far and take it off the loom and realize that we've not done something. So that looks good, and we're ready to add our slip knot band. I'm going to take a single black band, reach down through all of these bands and make sure that I have all of them. Grab a hold of the end of my loop, pull it up through the center, and form my slip knot. And I'm just going to give that a gentle tug. And of course, well, this will give me a good way to demonstrate that you can still use a broken band. So what we're going to do, since I've broken my band, I'm going to join the broken ends together and hold them with my fingertips. And I'm going to reach down through all of these bands on the peg. I'm going to grab a hold of the loop, pull it up through the center, and then grab the side of the bands and pull them through my loop. And once I get that through, I can just grab a hold of the ends and give that a little tug. And that's okay, it broke with enough left. Give that a little tug. And that's fine. And now we're ready to remove this from the loom. And don't worry, that broken band will hold. I'm going to tighten it up again. I demonstrate that because, as I said, I am the queen of cheap, and I like to keep everything. My husband prefers to call it hoarding, but I think it's just being practical. And I figure if I can use a broken band, why not? Why waste a good band as a slip knot band when I can just use a broken one? And if I can save anybody any money, then I figure I'm one step ahead already. So I'm just releasing the bands from their pegs. And when I get to the last one, because there are so many, I'm just going to reach my hook in and remove that. And now, again, like I said, I'm going to just tighten that up a little bit. And that's no different than a regular knot with a loop. If it was any shorter, I might tie it, but I think it's fine. So I'm just going to leave it. And now I want to define his feet a little bit. And I'm going to adjust his cap band, place my hook down through the center, and just give a tug to the side. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, putting my hook down through the center of the teardrop and giving the bands a little tug. And I will adjust cap band. And as you can see, that just defines his feet a little more. Going to do the same thing with the arms. I want them down at the sides a little bit. So I'm going to place my hook down through the center and just give the bands a little tug. And that will put his arm down. The same thing on the other side, putting my hook through the teardrop and giving a little tug. And now we can attach our goalie pads and our blocker pad. And I'll start with the blocker pad. And this is going to go on the arm opposite of the goalie glove. So what we're going to do, we're going to grab a hold of both of our slip knot bands, and I'm going to double them. And this is the top of my blocker pad. I want my pad basically to go on the back of my arm. I need to place my hand with the top of the blocker pad facing me. I want to turn my character over so that I'm looking at his back. And that's assuming your goalie glove is on your character's left hand on your right side. So I want to turn my character over, grab a hold of my regular hockey glove, and with the top of my blocker pad facing me, I want to put my arm through the double loop I've just made with the slip knot bands. And I'm going to slide that up his arm. And before I go any further, we're going to fix the stripes. And we just need to grab 2 of the red bands and stretch them over the glove so that we've got 1 stripe, I guess 2 stripes on each side. And we want to separate the bands a little bit so that the stripes are more in position where they should be, as per their real jersey of the Belleville Bulls. And now what we want to do is turn our character back over, and here's where you'll see why this holding band is important. We're going to take our holding band and again tuck our glove through and let that go. And that puts our blocker pad on his arm. So now what I want to do is reach my hook down through the top of my teardrop, not through the center, and I'm just going to give the bands a little tug so that his arm is more to the front. And now we can add his shin pads. What we want to do with our shin pads is we want to line them up so that the 2 red bands are pointing to the center of the leg. And I suppose if you prefer to have them the opposite way, you could do that as well. But I believe the pattern on the goalie's shin pads, it's the other way. But whichever way you prefer, it is your character. Again, we're going to take our 2 slip knot bands and we're going to double them. And because we want this on the top of our leg, we need to go down through the front of our shin pad. And we'll tuck our skate through and slide this up. And then again, with the holding bands that are sticking out on the back, we want to just tuck his skate through and secure those bands. And we can slide that up. And we want to do the same thing for the other foot. We're going to take our 2 slip knot bands, put them together, and double them. And again, we want to go down through the front of the shin pad. And we'll slide that up his leg. And again, we'll take the holding bands that are sticking out in the back, and we will tuck our skate through. And there we go. And you can just adjust these on his legs however you wish. And my arm seems to be staying in place fairly well there. I'm going to kind of have him again in the butterfly position here. And here we go. And if your arm isn't staying in this position, that's what the C-clip would be for. And all you would do is attach a C-clip to one of the bands in the glove. Not the holding bands, because they're pretty loose and it will stretch and not really hold it tight to his body. But I'm just going to fasten the C-clip through one of these bands, and then I will position my glove where I want it across his belly, and I can just attach the C-clip to another one of the bands. And we'll fold his hand over and fix the pad. And because of the positioning, the C-clip won't be noticeable. And now we want to tuck our slipknot band in the back so that it's not noticeable. And I'm just going to weave my hook through a couple of these bands, grab a hold of these two ends, and pull them through. And I will have to do that again for the longer band. Just through a couple of spots and weave it through, just so that you can't notice it. And there you go. This is our Belleville Bull goalie. And I also have a video tutorial for the goalie stick. So if you would like to make a stick for your goalie, go ahead and check out that tutorial. I'll have a link below. And thank you so much for watching. Please comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say and see what you come up with if you try this design. Leslie, thank you so much for this suggestion. If anybody else has any requests, please let me know. You can comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I will be doing again all 30 of the NHL teams, or whichever team you would like me to do. And so subscribe and you can be updated for when that tutorial is posted. So again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.